Welcome to Soft Talk. Let's start the conversation. Let's start with this question for the Nepali electorate in the face of local elections. These elections are slated for May 13, 2022. The question is, are you happy? Yes, no, don't know, can't say. This is the question to the Nepali electorate. Wait, while answering this question, be honest to yourself. Remember, you don't have to be politically correct. You don't have to subscribe to particular views. Remember, you are not facing the camera. Hooligans bent on getting what you call, within quotes, the right response are not marauding around. So you need not fear. I am sharing with you a report from this International Foundation for Electoral Systems. It has a piece, different materials about the elections in Nepal, particularly the local elections that are just around the bend, around the corner. Don't fake your feelings and act as angels, cherubs assigned to spread happiness around the world. As you know, many world bodies have been investing billions of dollars for the same. Why this world, the third world in particular, has not been able to put on a grin, leave aside that cheek to cheek smile, despite such huge investments, is perhaps the most difficult question of our times. Is the dollar lost in the pipeline? The Buddha is meditating under the peepal tree. Who else would seek the answer? Who else would know the answer to this question? Forget it for now. I'm sharing with you some findings of this World Happiness Index 2022. There are some interesting findings. We'll talk about these findings later on in this program. This much for now. Let's continue with our main presentation. For now, let's even forget the findings of the World Happiness Index 2022. That index has found in Europe a fountain of happiness with 8 countries of the world, 8 countries of the continent enjoying the topmost slots. I apologize for my sore throat. Nepal figures as the happiest country in South Asia. Its rank is 84, while Bangladesh rank 94, Pakistan rank 121, Sri Lanka rank 127, India 136, and Afghanistan 146 cheer Nepal on. The rest of the world can perceive us to be one happy country, but it doesn't mean nothing if we are not happy from within. Anyways, happiness can be a very shallow idea oftentimes. Tin pot dictators can find happiness even by opting for ethnic cleansing and by driving away lakhs of citizens if they perceive them to be a threat to their strain of despotism. What good is happiness if that is contingent on the fulfillment of the whims and fancies of different despots? Sadly, the international community seems to have no problem with such despots and their quote unquote democratic systems. Back to the opening question. While answering it, shed the burden of having to project the image of a picture perfect country. Despite all our imperfections and imperfections, we are one of the most beautiful countries. The world knows that, and we know that. This time, get a bit angry over the state of affairs in Nepal. Angry over what? Angry over misrule, corruption, the breakdown of law and order. Angry over rising inflation, triggered by repeated hikes in the prices of fuel in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war. By the way, this Russia-Ukraine war alone is not to blame for the rising market prices in Nepal. Rampant corruption that has become a way of life for our political and bureaucratic elites is also to blame for the rising market prices. Angry over the audacity of our tried, tasted, failed, and corrupt to the core political parties to seek our vote in the upcoming local elections. They are seeking those votes, our precious votes, on top of their lungs, despite a disappointing performance over the decades. Angry over the fact that Nepal continues to fare poorly on the Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. You can have a look at Nepal's CPI score, that is Corruption Perception Index, over a decade if you think that all is honky dory in the God's own country. Angry over the apathy on the part of bureaucrats who like to be called the Rashtra Sevaks, the servants of the nation, and politicians towards the public. This public has been weathering an economic crisis in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war and the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic that dealt a serious blow to the Nepali economy. In the wake of economic crisis, politicians around the world take drastic measures to minimize its impact on the general public. That is the norm. In the wake of economic hardships, economic crisis, leaders in many countries cut down on their pay and perks. Some even work without pay. These people, these leaders, and even bureaucrats do every bit to ensure that public health, education, agriculture, law and order, and all those welfare schemes do not suffer even during the hardest of times. But our good for nothings are a shameful exception. Even when the inflation is starting to bite, the government has no plans to curb expenses. Instead, instead of opting for cuts in terms of pay and perks, the head of the government flies to a hill station that is just a stone's throw from the government headquarters for attending a conclave, a mountaineering conclave. The cost of that ride, a whopping 10 lakh rupees. The question arises, couldn't he have opted for road travel? Or could the Prime Minister not have addressed that conclave virtually if it were so important, instead of literally burning 10 lakh rupees on a single flight in these hard times? What's more, the government seems bent on infringing upon the autonomy of the central bank. It's not only the government that has been showing extreme insensitivity towards the public during this crisis. Except for token protests against price hikes, the opposition parties have also been acting as mute spectators towards the plight of the general public in these times, in these difficult times. I just showed you some pictures of what I was referring to as token protests from political parties and their student unions against these rising market prices. So let's continue with this presentation. None of these political parties have suggested, even feebly, a cut down on pay and perks for lawmakers, the members of the parliament, and bureaucrats when the national economy is on sickbed. Why would they? After all, they too will be needing, these parties will be needing millions of rupees to contest the elections. A political and bureaucratic system mired neck deep in corruption needs a thorough cleansing. How about initiating this process through the elections? This time, reformists or activists of different kinds should have pressed for what you call a none of the above legislation, allowing the electorate to discard all of the tried, tested, and failed political parties that are contesting the elections. This measure could have offered a measure of public resentment against the old guard, and this could have helped cleanse the political system. But still, all is not lost, and the voters can still make a huge difference. They can still make a huge difference by just venting their anger in creative ways while participating or choosing to not take part in the elections. At this point, let me share with you the Corruption Perceptions Index 2021. This election season, as I already mentioned, local level elections are on May 13, to be followed by provincial and federal elections in a matter of months. This election season, while politicians of different hues and shades come to us asking for our precious votes, let's keep in mind that these tried, tasted, and failed parties and their leaders are largely to blame for our pitiable plight. Rather, let's think about giving these new, untainted political parties a voice, a chance. This time, how about giving the new parties, new and the untainted parties, untasted parties, a chance to deliver? This time, let's carry a lot of anger and turn it into wisdom. This time, let's vote for Nepal, the Nepalis, and a new destiny. This time, if none of the parties are convincing enough, let's vote with our feet. That is one sure way to make our vote count. With this remark, I wrap up this edition of Soft Talk. I request you to support this initiative towards citizen journalism. Humbly request you to subscribe to this channel, like our presentations if they really touch your, win your hearts and minds, and give your valuable comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.